Three men walk into a conference room in Dallas, Texas. It's the year 2000. They're here to make an offer. $50 million. That's what they're asking for their struggling little startup that mails DVDs to people's houses. The executives at Blockbuster listen. They nod politely, and then they laugh these guys out of the fucking building. That startup was Netflix, and that decision, that one moment of corporate arrogance backed by what seemed like bulletproof math, would turn a $5 billion empire into a punchline in less than a decade. But here's what makes this story so brutal. Blockbuster didn't fail because they were stupid. They failed because they were too smart. They ran the numbers. They did the analysis. They made the logical choice. And that's exactly what killed them. Because the math they used to say no was the same math that was already rotting their business from the inside. They just couldn't see it yet. This is the story of how one decision destroyed Blockbuster, and why it's the perfect case study in how companies don't die from laziness, they die from confidence. Let's rewind for a second. Year 2000, Blockbuster is everywhere. 9,000 stores across 25 countries, 65 million customers. Friday night, their parking lots look like tailgate parties. Kids are running through aisles of VHS tapes. Parents are arguing about whether to rent Titanic again. The smell of stale popcorn and carpet cleaner is basically America. Blockbuster is movies. If you wanted to watch something at home, you went to Blockbuster. There was no other option. They had a monopoly on the weekend. And they were printing money, about $4.5 billion in revenue annually, $800 million in profit, stock price climbing. Wall Street loved them. This was a company that looked invincible. Then these two guys, Reed Hastings and Mark Randolph, show up with their little DVD by mail company, Netflix. At the time, they've got maybe 300,000 subscribers. They're losing money every quarter. Their big innovation is that you request movies online, they mail you the disc, and you send it back whenever you're done. No late fees. Cute idea, totally irrelevant in the world of instant gratification. So they pitch Blockbuster. Let us run your online operation. Promote us in your stores. And hey, if you want, just buy us outright for $50 million. We'll make this easy. John Antioco, Blockbuster's CEO, hears them out. His team runs the numbers, and here's what they see. Netflix is a money pit. Their model is clunky. Who the hell wants to wait 3 days for a DVD when you can drive 5 minutes to Blockbuster and get it right now? The math was clear. Netflix was a niche product for weirdos. Blockbuster was the mainstream king. Why pay $50 million for a company with no path to profitability? So they passed. And that decision, right there, was the beginning of the end. But here's the thing nobody at Blockbuster understood. They weren't actually in the movie rental business. They thought they were. That's what the stores said. That's what the marketing said. But if you looked at the actual money, the real revenue breakdown, you'd see something way darker. Blockbuster was in the late fee business. Let me show you how deep this goes. In the late 90s, Blockbuster made about $4.5 billion a year. Solid. But here's the kicker. $800 million of that, almost 16%, came from late fees, not from renting movies, from punishing people who brought them back late. You rent a movie Friday night. It's due Sunday. You forget. You bring it back Tuesday. That's $1.50 per day for 3 days. $4.50 in late fees on top of the $4 rental. You just paid more for being forgetful than you did for the actual movie. Now multiply that by millions of customers every week. That's not a side business. That's the engine. Late fees were subsidizing everything. The stores, the staff, the inventory, the shareholder dividends, all of it depended on people screwing up. And customers hated it. Not just disliked it, hated it. Studies from that era showed late fees were the #1 complaint about Blockbuster. People felt tricked. They'd rent a kids' movie and end up paying $12 because their toddler threw up on Sunday and they forgot to return it. It was a business model built on punishing human error. which, sure, is profitable, but it's also fragile as hell. Because the second someone offers an alternative, any alternative, customers will bail, even if that alternative is worse in other ways. Which brings us back to Netflix. In 2000, Netflix sucked by most measures. You had to wait days for your movie. Selection was limited. You couldn't browse in person. But they had one thing Blockbuster didn't: no late fees. Keep the DVD as long as you want. A week, a month, forever. We don't care. No punishment, no guilt, no clock ticking in the back of your mind. That wasn't just a feature, that was a philosophy. And it turned out that philosophy was worth more than convenience. See, Blockbuster thought they were competing on speed and selection, but they were actually competing on emotion. And emotionally, their brand was stress. Netflix's brand was relief. Blockbuster executives couldn't see that. They looked at Netflix's clunky mail system and thought, nobody's going to wait 3 days when they can get it now. They were thinking in terms of logistics, but customers were thinking in terms of feeling, and feelings always win in the long run. By 2002, Netflix had hit 1 million subscribers. Blockbuster started to sweat. So they did what big, scared companies always do. They copied the threat. In 2004, Blockbuster launched Blockbuster Online. DVD by mail, no late fees, the whole Netflix model. And honestly, it worked pretty well at first. By 2007, Blockbuster Online had 3 million subscribers. Netflix had 7 million. It was a real fight. Blockbuster was still bigger. They had brand recognition. They had retail stores where you could swap your online rentals instantly. They were winning in some markets. But here's where the math gets fucked. Blockbuster Online had no late fees. Great. But Blockbuster stores still had late fees because corporate couldn't kill them. If they eliminated late fees across the board, they'd lose $800 million in annual revenue. Immediately, Wall Street would freak out. Shareholders would revolt. Earnings would crater. So they tried to run both models at the same time. Online with no late fees, retail with late fees. 2 contradictory businesses under one brand. It was like trying to sell cigarettes and Nicorette at the same counter. You can't do both. Customers see right through that shit. And it gets worse. Store managers were still incentivized to maximize late fee revenue. Their bonuses depended on it. So while corporate was pushing Blockbuster Online as the future, the people on the ground were still squeezing customers for that extra $4. The company was at war with itself, and Netflix, who had no such conflict, was just quietly growing. Then 2007 happens. Netflix launches streaming. At first, it's a joke. The library is tiny, quality is terrible, it buffers constantly. But it's instant. No discs, no mail, just click and watch. Blockbuster saw this coming. They knew streaming was inevitable. Hell, they even tried to build their own streaming service. But they were drowning in debt from the retail stores, and the online division was bleeding cash trying to compete with Netflix on 2 fronts, mail and streaming. By 2010, Blockbuster filed for bankruptcy. By 2013, nearly every store was closed. That $5 billion empire was gone. Netflix, 33 million subscribers, producing original content, stock price climbing into the stratosphere. The company Blockbuster could have bought for $50 million was now worth tens of billions and growing. So what the hell happened? You could say Blockbuster was arrogant or blind or stuck in the past, but that's too simple. The truth is way more uncomfortable. Blockbuster made a perfectly logical decision based on the best information they had, and it destroyed them. Here's the trap. In 2000, when Netflix walked in with that offer, Blockbuster looked at the numbers and saw a company losing money with a clunky model and a tiny customer base. The math said, ignore them. They're not a threat. And at the time, that math was correct. Netflix wasn't a threat. Not yet. But what Blockbuster's math didn't account for, and couldn't account for, was that customer behavior was shifting, technology was improving, and their own business model was built on something customers actively resented. Blockbuster optimized for current profitability instead of future survival, and those two things are not the same. They asked the wrong question. They asked, is Netflix profitable right now, instead of,
What happens if people's tolerance for late fees drops to zero? They looked at Netflix's weaknesses and felt safe, but they should have been looking at their own.
Because here's the thing about late fees. They're not a sustainable moat. They're a liability disguised as an asset. Sure, they generated $800 million a year, but that revenue was entirely dependent on customers accepting a model they hated. The second someone offered an alternative, even a shittier alternative, that revenue was at risk. Blockbuster knew this. Deep down, they had to know, but they couldn't do anything about it. Because the moment they killed late fees, the stock would tank, earnings would collapse, executives would get fired. So they kept squeezing, right up until there was nobody left to squeeze. Netflix didn't beat Blockbuster with better technology, not in 2000. They didn't have better technology. They beat Blockbuster with a better philosophy. Build something customers actually like, even if it's less profitable right now. Sacrifice short-term margins for long-term loyalty. Trust that the technology will improve and the behavior will shift. And they were right. Let's zoom out for a second. This isn't just about Blockbuster. This pattern is everywhere. Kodak invented the digital camera and buried it because it threatened film sales. Taxi companies fought Uber instead of building ride apps. Newspapers ignored Craigslist and watched their classified revenue evaporate. Borders Books dismissed e-commerce and got obliterated by Amazon. Same story, every time. A dominant company makes money from something customers tolerate but don't love. A scrappy competitor offers something customers do love, even if it's janky as hell. The dominant company looks at the numbers, sees the competitor is small and unprofitable, and dismisses them. By the time the numbers shift, it's too late. It's not stupidity, it's structural blindness. When your paycheck depends on Model A, it's almost impossible to see the value in Model B, especially when Model B looks weak. Your brain just rejects it. Your incentives won't let you believe it. Blockbuster's executives weren't idiots. They were smart people trapped in a system that rewarded optimizing the present and punished betting on the future. Wall Street wanted quarterly growth. Shareholders wanted dividends. Store managers wanted their bonuses. Every incentive pointed toward protecting late fees and dismissing Netflix. Saying yes to Netflix in 2000 would have meant admitting their entire business model was doomed, and nobody wants to admit that, especially when the evidence is still murky. Here's the part that really stings. Even if Blockbuster had bought Netflix, they probably would have killed it. Big companies are terrible at nurturing disruptive businesses. They impose bureaucracy. They force profitability targets. They try to make the new thing fit into the old structure, and in the process, they suffocate the innovation. There's a decent chance that if Blockbuster had acquired Netflix in 2000, they would have turned it into Blockbuster Online 5 years earlier, kept the late fees in stores, tried to squeeze it for short-term revenue, and still gotten crushed when streaming took off. Corporate culture is like an immune system. It attacks foreign ideas, even when those ideas are trying to save the organism. So maybe Blockbuster was fucked either way. Maybe the decision in 2000 didn't actually matter because the rot was already too deep. But we'll never know because they didn't even try. They looked at the future, ran the numbers, and decided the present was more valuable. And that's what killed them.
So where does this leave us? I think about Blockbuster every time I see a massive company dismiss a competitor as too small to matter. Every time I see an industry clinging to a revenue stream they know customers hate. Every time I see smart people making decisions that will obviously look insane 10 years from now. Because it's never obvious in the moment. That's the terrifying part. Blockbuster's decision made perfect sense in 2000. Netflix was unprofitable. Their model was clunky. Streaming didn't exist. The numbers said, stay the course. Double down on what's working. And that logic, that reasonable, data-driven logic, was exactly what destroyed them. The next Blockbuster moment is happening right now. Somewhere, some company is looking at some scrappy upstart and doing the math and saying no. And in 10 years, we'll all look back and wonder how they missed it. But they don't miss it because they're dumb.
They miss it because they're asking the wrong question. They're asking, does this make us money today? Instead of, does this keep us alive tomorrow? Blockbuster didn't destroy itself through incompetence. They destroyed themselves by making one perfectly reasonable, data-backed, logical decision. And they were catastrophically wrong. So, here's the question I'll leave you with. What's your industry's Netflix? What's the thing everyone's dismissing right now because the numbers don't make sense yet? What's the uncomfortable truth that's too expensive to admit? Because odds are someone's already pitching it, someone's already building it, and someone's already laughing them out of the room, just like Blockbuster did.